For most people, a public square on a Saturday morning is just a normal scene. The creak of bicycles, the hurried footsteps of joggers, and the low hum of distracted conversation. But on this morning in this square, the scene carried an invisible tension that few could have foreseen. His name was Francisco Montero, almost 70 years old, but with the spirit of someone who refused to grow old. Since he retired, Juan Ribeiro Square was his sacred ritual, stretching with the senior citizens, light walks and always a bitter black coffee at the kiosk on the corner after the final stretch. It was his way of keeping his body steady and his head on straight. But on that morning of May 9th, the day of his 70th birthday, something different was in the air, and it wasn't just the aroma of fresh coffee. The physical education teacher, Vinicius, and his colleagues had prepared a surprise. A colorful fruit table, a simple cake with the name Seu Francisco written in blue icing, and a small, portable radio that would play his favorite samba, a simple gesture for a beloved man. But no one knew that other, much colder eyes were also watching the square that morning. Francisco was more than just a friendly retiree. He was the father of Sergeant Montero, one of the most respected operators of the elite troop of the state military police, a man of honor who, in recent months, had led relentless operations against the drug factions that controlled the neighboring favelas. And the IDT retaliation, silent and calculated, was about to explode in the place that Francisco considered most safe. The information reached the elite troop headquarters shortly after 7:45 a.m. Sergeant Montero's father was taken hostage. Juan Ribeiro Square, armed gang, critical situation. As the news spread through radios and cell phones, a surgical operation began to be set up. It wasn't just another mission, it was personal. And when it's personal, every move carries the weight of something else. Honor, fear, loyalty, and revenge. If you want to follow this thrilling story to the end, and many other real missions that show the most intense side of crime fighting, subscribe to the channel now. Conflict Route. Here, you'll dive behind the scenes of the action, into stories that few cameras show, and into decisions that can change everything in a fraction of a second. Now, take a deep breath, because what comes next will test the limits of courage, strategy, and composure of a team that cannot afford to fail. The leader of the gang, known only as Cashew, a former owner of the hill, who saw his accomplices being hunted down one by the hands of the elite troops, now demanded the impossible. I want the police out of the favela. I want the helicopter out of the sky. Otherwise, the old man will die in front of the cameras. In the distance, the best snipers adjusted their scopes. In the operations van, the negotiators reviewed dossiers and strategies. The clock was ticking. Sweat was pouring. In the square, Mr. Francisco, trembling, cried, unable to understand how his birthday celebration had turned into a nightmare. Sergeant Montero, wearing a black vest, a rifle in his hands, and a stone-faced expression, adjusted the radio on his shoulder. "This is our mission. Nobody messes with a Skull's family," and walks away. The clock in the square read 7:23. The sun was beginning to cross the tops of the almond trees, casting golden rays on the worn tile floor. Donna Marlene was arranging the flowered tablecloth on the improvised table, while Professor Vinicius gave his classmates his final instructions. "Guys, he should be here in 15 minutes. Let's get everything ready, without making any noise. When he finishes his walk, we'll call him to stretch and—" "Surprise!" whispered Vinicius, holding the cake with both hands, the flawless blue frosting shining under the soft morning light. Francisco walked with the same rhythmic step as always, his worn-out grey t-shirt stuck to his sweaty chest, and his faded cap covering his thinning hair. He smiled. He smiled as if he were no longer in a hurry, or in debt, or in guilt. But life has a cruel way of turning the tables when you least expect it. Less than 2 blocks away, a black Renault Duster with tinted windows was driving slowly. Inside were 4 men, 3 armed with .556 caliber rifles and Glock pistols in their holsters. The 4th, Cashew, was wearing a white tank top and dark jeans, his eyes hard and bloodshot. In the back seat, he was smoothing out a crumpled sheet of paper, a photo. In the photo, Sergeant Montero and his father were hugging each other at the gate of a simple house in the neighboring neighborhood. The sergeant, wearing his elite troop uniform, smiled proudly. The old man, wearing a cap, smiled even wider. Kaju was chewing on a toothpick, his jaw clenched. "Today, the skull will cry," he murmured, putting down the toothpick. The car stopped next to the square. The men jumped out quickly and with rehearsed precision. Two ran to the back of the kiosk. Kaju and another approached Francisco as if they were ordinary passers-by. Vinicius, still organizing the fruit, didn't even notice the movement. And when he did, it was already too late. The first blow was sharp and surgical, a gun butt to the back of the neck. Francisco fell to his knees, disoriented. Kaju, with a pistol pointed at the old man's head, shouted, "Everyone on the ground! This is between me and the police!" Instant panic, screams, bags flying, elderly people struggling to duck. Vinicius raised his hands, looking shocked. Kaju pulled Francisco by the collar of his shirt, dragging him to the bandstand in the square. In less than 2 minutes, the square became a stage. The crowd began to gather on the other side of the street, cell phones raised. It was exactly what Kaju wanted. Exposure, press, pressure. Francisco was shaking. Tears were flowing uncontrollably. He could barely stand. His breathing was uneven. Across town, at the Special Operations Battalion, the radio crackled. "Hostage confirmed. Praça Juan Ribeiro. Armed gang. Presence of civilians. Alpha team requested immediately." Sergeant Montero, who was finishing an operations report, looked up when he heard the name of the enlisted man. His stomach sank. His throat went dry. He didn't need to hear any more. He threw his tactical vest over his uniform, grabbed his rifle, and headed down the hall. "It's my father." The troop commander, Captain Arantes, did not hesitate. "Alpha, Beta, and Sniper, we leave now, and bring me the negotiators." As the vehicles sped off and the support helicopter took off, in the heart of João Ribeiro Square, Kaju raised his cell phone in front of the cameras of journalists who were beginning to arrive. Live connection. "Listen up, Brazil. This is Kaju. And this old man here is going to pay the price for the cowardice of this police force that kills innocent people. I want the helicopter out of the sky and the police out of the favela, or he's going to die. Live." Francisco, his eyes filled with tears, tried to whisper a prayer, but his voice would not come out. The deep roar of engines cut through the morning as the elite troop vehicles turned the corner of João Ribeiro Square. 4 armored vehicles, 2 black SUVs, and the negotiation van. The sirens were off. It was a tactical entrance without fanfare, but the mere presence of those vehicles commanded respect and fear. Sergeant Montero got out of the vehicle before it even came to a complete stop. The Imbel IA-2 rifle was firmly in his hands. His eyes were sparkling. His jaw was set. The black vest with the skull engraved on the chest shone in the sun. He advanced towards the security line formed by the local patrolmen. Commander Arantes approached, placing a firm hand on Montero's shoulder. "I know it's your father, Montero, but you're under my direct command. Keep a cool head, otherwise we'll both lose you." Montero nodded without taking his eyes off the square. Cool head, warm heart. Mission given is mission accomplished. On the other side, the press section was already swelling. Cameras, reporters, microphones. Exactly what Kaju wanted. The spotlight. In the bandstand, Kaju kept Francisco kneeling with his hands over his head, the pistol pressed against the old man's sweaty temple. The old man cried convulsively, his chest heaving, his legs failing him. The sniper team was already positioning itself. Lieutenant Adriana, Alpha's chief sniper, silently climbed onto the terrace of a bakery 180 meters from the bandstand. She lay down, adjusted her Tika T3X rifle with Schmidt and Bender scope, and whispered into the radio. "Alpha 1, sniper in position, target in view, I need a wind measurement." Down below, the digital intelligence team brought in the information. The negotiator, Major Felipe, a calm man, velvety voice, experienced in more than 30 crises, picked up the megaphone. "I want a direct line to the kidnapper now, and bring the plan of the square. I need all the escape routes." Meanwhile, Montero, standing next to the commander, clenched his fists. Every second seemed like a year. On the radio, Adriana's voice appeared calm. "Sergeant, I have the target in my sights. If he raises his arm more than 6 inches, I'll take him out." The commander looked at Montero. "This is not the time. Let's try to bring your father back alive." On the bandstand, Caju paced back and forth. Sweat was beginning to soak his tank top. His eyes scanned the crowd, looking for the cameras. He raised his cell phone again, this time live. "Look here! Montero's father! The skull! Is this your hero?" he shouted, pushing Francisco's head. "I want the helicopter off the hill now, or I'll kill the old man." The negotiator slowly approached the security line, megaphone in hand. "This is Major Felipe. We are listening to you, Caju. Let's talk." "You don't want to." "Heard this gentleman. I know that." Caju laughed dryly, his teeth clenched. "I want the press to show that the police only kill black and poor people in the favela. I want space. I want the helicopter out, or he dies live." Francisco groaned softly. His legs buckled. He fell to his side, his shoulders shaking. Tears streaked his face. His rapid heartbeat was visible in his wrinkled neck. On the radio, Adriana whispered, "He's going to faint." Montero put his hand to his chest, breathing heavily. The commander, attentive, said firmly, "Prepare Plan Bravo. If the hostage faints, the intervention window is 3 seconds. I repeat, 3 seconds." In the operation center, the plan of the square appeared on the folding table. 4 possible escape routes. Caju was surrounded. He just didn't know it yet. "Let's create a distraction at Point Charlie. The sniper will neutralize him. Montero, you go in with Beta from the side and get the old man out of there. Quick and clean," ordered the commander, his voice low and sharp. Montero took a deep breath. It was personal, but he was also a technician. It was his father's life, and as every Skull knows, Skull doesn't back down, Skull doesn't give up, Skull doesn't leave anyone behind. On the bandstand, Francisco collapsed completely, his body limp. He had fainted. The commander shouted into the radio, "Bravo! Bravo! Bravo!" Adriana exhaled once, her finger soft on the trigger. In the van, Beta's team blasted out the side of the square. Montero ran with the speed of someone who carries his entire soul in his chest. Adrenaline has a curious effect on the senses. The world slows down. Sound becomes compressed. The body reacts before the brain even processes it. When the commander shouted, "Bravo!" each member of the troop already knew exactly what to do. There was no room for error. Not on that mission. Not with Montero's father involved. On the roof of the bakery, Adriana held her breath and adjusted the telescope to the millimeter. Target in the field. Distance 182 meters. Wind 0. Movement constant. She followed every micro-gesture of Caju. The criminal, distracted by Francisco's collapsing body, raised his right arm, trying to revive him. And at that moment, the gap appeared. The shot echoed dryly, muffled by the Tikka T3X's silencer. The 7.62 round went through Caju's left collarbone, the kinetic force knocking him onto his back with the pistol slipping from his hand. His body arched before, falling onto the bandstand. At the same time, along the side of the square, the Beta team advanced. Montero led the formation, each step calculated, his rifle locked in a high position. Behind him, Corporal Ewerton and Private Braga covered the flanks. "Contact neutralized! Contact neutralized!" Adriana confirmed over the radio, already cocking another cartridge. Montero jumped over the bandstand railing in a single movement, sliding on his knees towards his father's body. Francisco was limp, his breathing shallow, but he was pulsing. Dad, it's me, Montero. It's okay." The sergeant's voice was firm, but the tremor in his eyes gave him away. He checked his pulse, turned his father on his side, and began to stabilize him, as he had been trained. Around him, Beta formed a perimeter. Kaju was groaning on the floor, his mouth full of blood. His white shirt now dyed dark red. 2 ambulances entered the square with an escort. The crowd, contained 50 meters away, applauded and cheered without really understanding the outcome. They only saw the skull winning once again. Montero lifted his father in his arms. The old man was unconscious, but safe. He walked down the stairs of the bandstand with the firmness of someone who would not waver, not even by a millimeter. Hostage rescued. Integ. Adriana's voice stopped abruptly on the radio. On the opposite side of the square, behind a concrete bench, Kaju's partner, who had been invisible until then, appeared. An AR-15, rifle in his hands, his eyes desperate. He wasn't shooting for accuracy, it was pure desperation. "Shoot! Delta Point!" shouted Soldier Braga, already shooting back. Montero turned his body, protecting his father with his own. He laid the old man down behind a newspaper stand and raised his rifle. Now it was instinct. It was skull. Bullets tore through the air. The bang echoed through the buildings. The crowd ducked, screaming. Adriana, cold as ice, readjusted her telescope. "I have the target. I can neutralize it," she whispered. On the ground, Montero did not hesitate. "Sniper, fire!" The second shot hit the bandit at the base of the neck. The body fell without resistance. Silence. Dust in the air. The echo of the last bullets fading like a whisper. Target 2 neutralized. Area secured. Adriana confirmed, her voice like stone. Montero looked up. His father was still breathing. He closed his eyes for a second, relieved. Then he settled the old man in his arms again and marched as he always did on operations, with honor, with firmness, with discipline. When he crossed the security line, his colleagues made room. Commander Arantes looked at him calmly. "Mission accomplished, Montero. Your father is alive." Montero didn't answer. He just nodded. The lost look on Francisco's tired face, now beginning to regain consciousness. In the distance, Kaju's body lay motionless on the bandstand. The live stream had stopped. The cameras were turned off. The message had been delivered. Nobody messes with a skull's family. The clock read 12:47 when Juan Ribeiro Square was finally cleared. The midday sun beat down hard on the asphalt, now marked by white perimeter lines, scattered shell casings, and the trail of armored vehicles. The bandstand, which hours before had been a scene of celebration and joy, was now a portrait of technique, blood, and tactical victory. Commander Arantes gathered the troops in the center of the square, away from the cameras, away from the civilians. Montero was standing. His father had already been taken to the hospital under medical care, with no risk of death. The commander looked around the group, tired, sweaty, but alive. The skull vest was embedded in each of their chests. He took a deep breath and spoke with the firmness that only an elite operator carries. "Today we showed once again why skulls don't bow their heads to criminals. Today, a family man almost paid with his life for the cowardice of drug traffickers who think they can tie the state's hand with threats, but can't. They won't. Not while we're in uniform. Absolute silence. No one moved a muscle. This troop is on the front line because it is prepared, disciplined, and has cold blood. You kept your heads together even with one of our family caught in the crossfire. The state does not negotiate with armed criminals. The state complies with the law, and today we comply." He turned his body, facing Montero. "And you, Sergeant, held the wave like an elite operator should. We don't take off our uniforms for anyone, not even for our own blood. Congratulations." Montero nodded, his jaw clenched. "Mission given, mission accomplished," he replied dryly. On the side, Adriana lowered the rifle scope, calmly disassembling the weapon. Braga wiped the sweat from his forehead, while Ewerton adjusted his vest. It was another mission completed, another one for the history, but this one had something else, had honor, had a message. On the radio, the center confirmed, 2 criminals dead, no police officers injured, hostage rescued alive, area secured. The press cameras, still scattered, were starting to turn their backs. The show was over. There would be no crying from a criminal's lawyer there. Not that day, the commander concluded. Crime thought it would bring the elite troops to their knees with a personal threat. Today they learned that we do not kneel, we move forward. He raised his arm. Mission complete, Alpha. Let's go to base. The operators collected the material in silence. The square was slowly emptied. When the last skull crossed the safety line, only the echo of footsteps and the clear mark on the ground remained. When the state hesitates, crime advances. When the skull steps, crime retreats. And so it was that day. Now it's up to you. If this story impacted you, leave your like. If you've ever been through something similar, or know someone who has been on the edge, comment below. Your opinion strengthens this. Mission, root of conflict. Here the truth is not hidden, it imposes itself.